and Kim Jong-un.
We got to do something about North Korea. I think we've shown great strength.
The people that he's pegging, like Little Kim, have no idea what he's really going to do.
You know how easy, remember I used to tell how easy it is to be presidential? But you'd all be out of here right now, but you'd be so bored. This is much more effective. Don't forget, this got us elected. Our new slogan is going to be, keep America great, exclamation point.
The new slogan of Fox and Friends, keep Fox and Friends great, exclamation point.
That's the best part.
The best point.
You need this big cup of Joe, because you don't want to be sleepy eyes in the morning.
Be careful, because it actually keeps the coffee hot, and I burnt my tongue. So.
It does, and no one should drink coffee out of a straw, which is why I removed my straw, because it's painful.
You're very particular about these things.
I am. Coffee's important to me. You mean, if you're in the Army, you're Morning Joe, not Morning Joe.
Oh, Morning Joe.
Not Morning Joe.
Your pals at Morning Joe.
Walked into that one.
Your colleagues.
The real Morning Joe, not fake news Morning Joe. You want to have it right.
Well,
Right now it's in
speaking
my mouth.
of the media, last night at the rally in Pennsylvania,
There was a rally last night?
There was a rally.
Who was speaking?
The president of the United States.
Go.
And I'll tell you what, he was not afraid to take on Ed's colleagues in the media. Take a look.
At Washington, D.C., you got a lot of evil there, but we're getting it out step by step. A lot of evil, a lot of bad people, a lot of bad people, a lot of fake media. You ever see the story where it's 1999, I'm on Meet the Press, a show now headed by Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd. He's a sleeping son of a I'll tell you. They showed it this morning, 1999, and I'm talking about North Korea. You got to take them out now. And then they have Clinton saying, we are pleased to announce that we have made a deal with North Korea. Well, you know how that deal turned out, right? We gave billions and billions of dollars and lots of other things, and we got nothing. A lot of people thought we were going to war, and all of a sudden they come in, they say, we're going to have a meeting, and there's no more missiles going off. And they want to denuclearize. We may sit down and make the greatest deal for the world and for all of these countries. The press for 2 hours is going, this is fantastic. This is amazing. A certain anchor on CNN, fake as hell, CNN. The worst. Their ratings are lousy, by the way, and compared to Fox, their ratings. A certain anchor, female, said, this is really something. He would go down as a truly great president. They couldn't believe it. The worst of them, CNN, MSNBC, which is word
on at least one point there, which was the like sort of grudging, okay, we have to give him credit that the media writ large had a few nights ago when he announces this big meeting with North Korea.
And that certain anchor was Erin Burnett. You have to believe that maybe at CNN, it's not so good for her there anymore. I mean, some of her colleagues are kind of going, come on.
Why are
they are so grudging. They don't want to give them credit for perhaps the biggest breakthrough in international policy in a long time.
Well, we'll see where it goes. And Ed, I'm going to have to say, he was right at more than at least one point.
I said at least one.
At least one, so maybe two or three. But a big one, I mean, he's making a cultural critique of our media, which he's done so devastatingly effectively for a long time. But his point about 1999 and North Korea and Bill Clinton is a very important one.
Yeah.
Just cutting a deal so you can have a ceremony to make it look like you're doing something doesn't mean you're making the world a safer or better place. Yeah. That enabled a roadmap for Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un, to get nuclear weapons to the point where we are today. It's a preview of what Iran could look like as well, and why leaders selling you something don't mean they're making your life better.
Which is why
and that's
the
the point
Clinton
President Trump
and
is making.
Obama loyalists who have been on social media in recent days and on television mocking this potential meeting with Kim Jong-un are ridiculous because they just kicked the can down the road with North Korea year after year in the Clinton and Obama years and hand the mess to Donald Trump. He tries to do something about it, and they're mocking it.
And it gets worse and worse with every year. And you're right about what it looks like when they have those ceremonies. I saw the ceremony with Clinton. I saw the ceremony for the Iran deal. And I don't think anybody thought anything was going to change in those situations. There's something different in this case. And like you said, we still have a lot to see. We don't know how this meeting will go. We don't know if it's going to end in the result we want. But we all feel a little more optimistic somehow because this is different. This
Ceremonies.
feels
It
different.
always brings to mind the Bo Bergdahl ceremony as well.
Yeah.
That was a doozy as well. You really nailed that one. Well, those types of images are part of what propelled President Trump to the White House in 2016. Well, last night on the campaign trail in Pennsylvania, he's already talking about 2020, not just a slogan, but the potential contenders he might have to run against. Here's the president.
6 months prior to the election in 2020, every one of those guys, we really endorse Donald Trump. We think he has to win. You know why? Because if I don't win the election, their ratings are going to go so far down, they're going to be out of business, every one of them. Can you imagine? Can you imagine covering Bernie or Pocahontas? Pocahontas, how about that? Can you imagine these guys? Some of them are actually smiling, but some of them just can't stand it, honestly. Some of them, they can't take it. Can you imagine having to cover Elizabeth Warren for 4 years? I'd love Oprah to win. I'd love to beat Oprah. I know her weakness. Wouldn't we love to run against Oprah? I would love it. I would love it. That would be a painful experience for her. But our new slogan, when we start running in, can you believe it, 2 years from now, is going to be Keep America Great! Exclamation point.
So he only said Elizabeth Warren once. Every other time, and it was multiple times that referred to her, he called her Pocahontas. The crowd knows who that is. I mean, that nickname has stuck. And I think it's very interesting because, you know, yesterday you had the test that you're taking, the
DNA test,
the DNA test. Liberals are calling for her to take the DNA test. And I think the fact that the president has really so effectively attached that name, I don't think she could run for president unless she takes that DNA test, because Pocahontas has been effective.
It has. And Ed, you know, you cover this stuff, the horse race for 2020. Is he setting the groundwork to dare people to run against him?
He is, because, you know, he took on Oprah and was basically saying she wants to get in here. It's going to be a street fight. And he's taking on Democratic leaders who want to impeach him. Watch.
And Maxine Waters, a very low IQ individual. You ever see her? You ever see her? We will impeach him. We will impeach the president. But he hasn't done anything wrong. It doesn't matter. We will impeach him. She's a low IQ individual. You can't help it. She really is. We will impeach him. But you have Maxine Waters, and you have plenty of others. And I mean, Nancy Pelosi, you can't have that.
I mean, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, well, the other thing I was going to say is beyond all of the fun and the nicknames, he's putting together a case for re-election in 2020, which is something the media doesn't want to admit. You put together what we're talking about on North Korea, if that's a success. With the jobs report on Friday, over 300,000 jobs, and the tax cut and the economic run we're starting to see, all the attacks that the media will launch on this president might not matter.
Yeah, and the other part of the case is, look at those yokels over there. Do you want them to run your government? Right. From socialist Bernie Sanders to Pocahontas Elizabeth Warren to Nancy Pelosi, who can't win an election, to Maxine Waters, who only screams impeach 45. What do they stand for? And you go to Steel Country in Pennsylvania, you stand on the podium and say, I'm bringing your jobs back, as you said, Ed. Yeah. That's a devastating case against a party that is dead in the water.
It is,
right now.
and all of this name calling and all these great cultural moments, as you call that, he's taking on the media, he's taking on, the biggest celebrities in Hollywood. It wouldn't work if there were no results behind it. I mean, this would be, imagine where his poll numbers would be with the amount of attacks he's gotten from the media. And again, these monikers, this strategy wouldn't work unless there was actual substance behind it. That's what's holding him up. That's what he's ultimately going to be running on, not all this entertainment, because they can't attack the numbers.
I just thought about right now, though, Rachel,
Sure.
we've gone an hour and 10 minutes and 19 seconds into this show, and not one mention of Russia.
Right.
Think about that. We've talked about it for 14 months, wall to wall, yet the narrative is so dead that there's nothing to talk. We'll see what Bob Mueller says, but ultimately the collusion narrative is dead. So what are they running on and talking about?
And that's why the president's already looking down the horizon past the midterms in some ways.
Absolutely.
Saying he's got the big picture, so we'll see.
It's true.
Well, we got to move to some headlines, and we'll get back to some of these topics a little later on. A 15-hour standoff ending with an accused cop killer behind bars.
Oh,
The suspected gunman, Isaias de Jesus Valencia, leading police on a chase, crashing into a pole and then barricading himself. Valencia's shooting and killing 30-year-old Pomona police officer Gregory Casillas, who was only on the force, sadly, for 6 months.
Greg is a hero, a man to be looked up to. He left his family at home to protect yours.
Casillas is the 15th officer shot and killed in the line of duty this year. He leaves behind a wife and 2 small children. Another officer was also shot. He is expected to recover. A psychologist expecting her first child among the 3 employees killed in a standoff at California's veterans' home. 29-year-old Jennifer Gonzalez was reportedly 7 months pregnant. She and 2 co-workers, 48-year-old Christine Lober and Jennifer Golick, were killed by Army veteran Albert Wong. Just days earlier, he was apparently kicked out of the home, which specializes in treating PTSD. According to reports, he made previous threats against one of the women. Wong shot himself during the incident. The Democratic Party vowing to fix its presidential nominating system. DNC leaders say they'll limit the influence of superdelegates, but they aren't saying how they'll do that. The persuasive group of dignitaries and elected officials were accused of unfairly favoring Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders during the 2016 campaign. DNC Chairman Tom Perez says the process will be improved before 2020. Tiger Woods is on the prowl to win his first pro tournament in years. Heading into today, he is currently 1 shot behind the leader in the Valspar Championship. This is the 70th time Woods has been this close to heading into a final, winning 62 of the occasions. If he wins, it would be Tiger's 80th PGA victory and his first since 2013.
Was watching that yesterday. It's a lot more exciting when Tiger's
a lot of golf fans hoping that he makes a comeback. That would,
it lifts all boats.
Yes, indeed. Well, if Russia meddled in the election, why didn't the Obama administration do anything about it? A new book claims Susan Rice gave a, quote, stand-down order and opposed responding to Russia. Former Congressman Jason Chafin,
hey, happy Mother's Day.
Gender neutral.
Gender neutral. President Trump labeling Democrats the protectors of criminal illegal immigrants, like members of the violent gang MS-13.
The Democrats are the party of sanctuary cities. Explain that one, right? They like to protect criminals. They like to protect MS-13. We're going after violent criminals, and we're going after vicious gang members, places that I know so well are loaded up with MS-13, where your daughter walks home. We liberate those towns, and the people are cheering.
New York teens Kayla Cuevas and her friend Nisa Mickens were killed at the hands of MS-13 gang members in 2016. And joining us now is Kayla's mother, Evelyn Rodriguez, and the Suffolk County DA and former police commissioner, Timothy Sheeny. We appreciate you both being here. Evelyn, it's so hard to even think about what you've gone through, because we talk about this issue as an immigration issue and as a fight and lawsuits and all of that, but you lost a daughter. Tell us about her.
It's been hard, but we've been coping every day.
What everyone's been able to do is turn that tragedy into positive energy in the community. She's done so much to champion for her community in Brentwood, and she's been so supportive of law enforcement. Since September of 2016, we've made over 300 arrests of MS-13 gang members, and much of that is because of the work that we're able to do with the community, and Evelyn's been on the forefront of that.
And Evelyn, you're filing a lawsuit against the school district saying they didn't do enough. My understanding is that your daughter actually alerted you and maybe others about the gang activity when it was happening at the school, correct?
Yes, it's been 2 years I've been going back and forth with the school district about my daughter being bullied, targeted. There was a knife.
Unbelievable.
involved.
And there was nothing done by the school district?
No, all we had was meetings, and they said they were going to take care of it. Obviously, they didn't take care of it because my daughter's not here today.
Now, you filed the lawsuit as mentioned, and as I understand it, the ACLU has actually filed a lawsuit pushing back against the Trump administration, saying they're going too far with the crackdown?
Yeah, so here's the issue. So we're targeting MS-13 gang members, both in terms of street arrests as well as federal RICO cases. We're targeting locations. Basically, if you're an MS-13 gang member in Suffolk County, the heat is on. And we're not going to make any apologies for that. We're doing it in a very targeted, aggressive way, and we're getting pushback from certain segments of our society, and you know, it's very misplaced. The war against MS-13 has been politicized, and we're not going to let that happen in Suffolk County. We're going to continue to collect reliable intelligence. We're going to work with all of our law enforcement partners. We're going to continue to target MS-13, and I want to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to all the law enforcement officers that put their lives on the line each and every day. As I mentioned, since September of 2016, over 300 arrests of over 220 individual gang members. That's incredible work, and it's because of the hard work of law enforcement.
Absolutely. And the president keeps the spotlight on this issue. I mean, a lot of people want to brush this under the rug. The reason why these gang members are in your residential community is a policy under the Obama administration for unaccompanied minors. And how is that policy still in place? Are you seeing changes in what's happening?
So Suffolk County is one of the largest recipients of UACs. We've received well over 5,000. In 2017, we received more UACs than any other community other than Los Angeles and a border town in Texas. And the problem is that the federal government is basically placing children in our communities with no resources and no oversight, and these children become prime-time recruitment for MS-13.
They're largely from El Salvador, correct?
Over 95% are from El Salvador, Guatemala, or Honduras.
And Evelyn, for the Democrats out there, or anyone in any party who sort of downplays this and says, oh, the president's exaggerating this threat, this obviously affected you in an incredibly horrific way. What's your message to people who want to say this is not a big deal?
You can't downsize a threat, and especially if it's against your child, and you've been going back and forth and nobody was listening. How many more kids need to die in order to make a change?
And we're listening now. We're going to keep that pressure on until the job is done.
That's right. And you're saying to the schools, hey, when somebody reports something, take it seriously. This is part of what this lawsuit is about, right? It's about getting the schools on board because they often have a good ear to what's happening.
Yeah. Our kids are in the school 6 to 8 hours a day, and if they have after-school activities, you know, they're in there maybe 10 to 12 hours a day.
Right.
So we rely on the school to make sure that our kids are safe. While we're working, we should be thinking our kids are safe. Not wondering nowadays, is a school secured?
Yeah.
Do they have enough security?
Wow.
Do they have enough cameras?
Your daughter had a right to a safe school. It's really a tragedy.
Every child has a right.
That's right.
Tim and Evelyn, our heart certainly goes out to you, and we're certainly listening, so thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having us.
Coming up, President Trump touting the economy and low unemployment in his first year. What else can we expect? Charles Payne is here, live, to tell us about your money.
Job reports was among the best numbers ever produced in the history of our country. African American unemployment has reached the lowest level in history. Hispanic unemployment is the lowest level in history. 155 million people are now employed. That is, came out this morning, that is the highest level of employment in the history of our country.
He's talking about the labor participation rate, which in the Obama years was very low, at historic lows, and now basically it's not just that we're creating jobs, but people are getting back into the job market. Nobody knows this better than Charles Payne. Charles, talk about that jobs report. Not a lot of people have unpeeled the onion and looked at the details.
You have to unpeel the onion because it is absolutely remarkable, and I think bigger than the number. By the way, 313,000 new jobs last month. Exceeded every expectation on Wall Street. The most optimistic estimates out there, it was much bigger than that. It was absolutely enormous. What I loved about it, though, there were two other things I loved even better than the headline number. Participation. 800,000 people came back into the workforce. That was the biggest surge in over 2 decades. 800,000 people said, you know what? I think things are better. I'm going to dust off the resume. I've got confidence again. I'm going to go look for a job. You know, you hear all of these surveys, and there's a million of them out there. There's no better survey than the fact that someone who probably was out of the job market for a long time finally looks around and says, now's the opportunity for me to go out there. And it's working. It's, by the way, it cuts across all lines. Black unemployment went to 6.8%, the second lowest in history since they've been keeping it. That's a good number, but what I was more impressed with, the participation rate surged. Same thing across the board. That's what we want. So that was a great part of it, perhaps the best part. The other part, I call them dirty fingernail jobs. Officially, they're called goods-producing jobs. Mining, manufacturing, construction, 100,000 of them. It's unheard of. Unheard of. It is really great.
I miss getting my fingernails.
These are the forgotten Americans that the president promised to bring jobs back to. These are the jobs that the Democrats said were gone forever, and he's bringing them back. And what's astounding to me is the media covers Russia 20 times more than the economy, and this economy is, as you've just pointed out, this is historic. This is mind-blowing from a business perspective. That must frustrate you, how little attention the mainstream media is giving.
You know what frustrates me is, when I got my show, the premise of my show, Making Money, was about self-empowerment. I want people to feel good about themselves. I want people to feel like they have a shot. I think America is the greatest country in the world, and I do despise the media for being so myopically for hating the president so much that they don't share great news that might encourage someone. So next month it will be 900,000 people, because the interesting part about economics and economies and all of that stuff, a large part of success is self-fulfilling. It's like life itself. You've got to believe it's going to work for it to work. And the more Americans that believe it's going to work, the more it's going to work. And we're already starting to see that.
And a lot of this is simple stuff. Not easy to do, but simple in its application. The president last night at the podium talked about not just everyone wanted to call it tax reform. He said, let's call it tax cuts because people understand what that means. Listen.
How is it possible not to pass tax cuts? Sir, I don't know. We just can't pass. It's been Reagan was the last one that did a big bill. And we just can't pass. Sir, the tax reform is not easy. I said, wait a minute. Do you call it tax reform? Or do you call it tax cuts? The tax cut bill. But I must tell you, and on this I think they were right. The politicians thought that was a little hokey. So we call it the U.S. Tax Cut and Jobs Bill.
The effective tax cuts.
Yeah. There was an article a month before the tax cut vote that said it polled worse than tax hikes. Does that sound logical to you?
No.
That people are actually out there saying, hey, I want to keep less of what I've earned. I would like to keep less. It didn't even sound logical.
Is that an NBC poll?
There's so many of them I lost track.
True. You can spin a poll any way you want it, phrase it the way you want to phrase it, but the reality is everybody wants more in their paycheck.
Well, the point you just hit on is the way you phrase things, right? So, again, if you ask the average person out there who works really hard, hey, would you like to keep more of the money that you've earned this week or less? It's a pretty simple question. If the answer is yes, maybe you would ask your congressman or congressperson to vote for lower taxes. And now, so the argument is, well, yeah, you've got tax cuts and you're keeping more money, or as Nancy Pelosi likes to call them, crumbs, but someone else is making more. Again, politics of envy, politics of division. The fact is, let people be thrilled about the fact that two things are happening. They're making more on their checks, and they're keeping more when it's all said and done.
And what you're saying is it's not just a good economy. This is an economy of opportunity. Opportunity for people who felt left out, frankly, during the last 8 years under Obama administration, when participation was so low, when people weren't optimistic.
We've come out of survival mode economically. We're back into the growth mode that made America the best country in the world. And let me tell you guys something. I'm predicting now you're going to see greater household formation. People are going to get married. They're going to have kids. They're going to have children. You're going to see more entrepreneurship, particularly amongst young people, because they stop starting businesses and things like that. You're going to see a lot of things that used to be be commonplace in this country. You're going to see a lot come back. I'm telling you right now, I don't know how they're going to spin it, but it's going to happen.
You're right. You know that people that got a tax cut, if they don't want the tax cut, they can voluntarily give that money back to the federal government. There's a place where you can donate your tax cut back.
To the Treasury.
So if you feel bad about it, give it back.
That's for the Warren Buffetts of the world. I think most of the people watching us are pretty happy with the tax cut.
You're right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we're going to turn to some headlines right now. The Justice Department will not crack down on small-time pot cases in legalized states. The news coming from Attorney General Jeff Sessions, even after reversing the Obama-era policy that paved the way for the cannabis industry in those places.
I am not going to tell Colorado or California or someone else, the possession of marijuana is legal under United States law. They haven't been working small marijuana cases before, and they're not going to be working them now.
8 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized recreational pot. Dozens of others have approved it for medical use. A Democratic congressional candidate's gun control stunt backfiring, even opening a federal investigation. What's she doing? She's calling it off.
These gun owners heard you, and we're going to stand by you.
Wow. Karen Mallard, who's running for a House seat in Virginia, posting this video of herself cutting an AR-15 in half. Some say it violates gun modification laws. Local police who now have the gun in their possession say the ATF is now investigating. Mallard said she simply wanted one less gun on the street.
Some consultant had a good idea. She did it, and now she's got
I don't know if she's got a lot of consultants there. New video just released shows military pilots encountering another UFO. The mysterious object moving so fast over the ocean, the pilot had a hard time tracking it. The 2015 footage is the latest to be released after Pentagon UFO research became public. Previously released footage showed a UFO flying near Air Force planes. Erase that endearing, personalized message to your mom and instead just wish her a happy You Day. British supermarket Waitrose selling a gender-neutral Mother's Day card before apparently removing it from its website. The store offering the so-called sentiments in hopes of being, quote, transgender inclusive. Don't get triggered, Pete.
Submitted without comments submitted without comments. Yeah. You know what I'm thinking. Think it yourself. All right, still ahead. An Al Jazeera host slamming conservatives and the women who vote for them.
What an American woman who believes not just in family values, but in American values like freedom and equality, vote Republican.
As you can imagine, that's not sitting well with a lot of Republican women.
And Saturday Night Live combining the two biggest news stories of the week for their cold open skit. Robert Mueller's probe and an epic breakup on The Bachelor. But is there a little truth to the parody? We'll have it.
A stand-up comedian and correspondent for Al Jazeera is slamming conservatives and the women who vote for them.
Woman and Republican. Is it possible to be both? The two often feel like an oxymoron, like Boss Baby or President Trump. That makes sense. Not only is the GOP rife with domestic abuse and sexual assault allegations, but the party of family values has consistently voted against women and family values.
So here to weigh in, the roaming millennial. Welcome to Fox and Friends.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so let's start. She says, listen, one of the things I didn't like about the Women's March were the pink hats. I think they kind of say that we women think from the waist down instead of the head up. This is what she's implying here, right? That all women care about are reproductive issues.
Right, and I think, in my opinion, it's extremely insulting and belittling to women to act as if all they care about is abortions, and that if politicians just throw abortions at women, we'll be good and we can vote for them. It's ridiculous, and they do the same thing with welfare as well. In the video, she talks about how the members are evil because they want to cut welfare, and most of them are women. They don't really talk about the arguments that conservative women actually do have.
Right, and so Republicans might respond and say, hey, well, we care about not welfare. We want people to get jobs. Unemployment among women is very low under President Trump. The numbers are higher. Also, the job numbers are higher for Hispanics, and African Americans are getting jobs at rates that we didn't see under the last administration. We can take a look at those numbers here, the unemployment numbers among women. I don't know if we have the minority ones, but what do you say to that?
Well, I think when progressives hear pro-women policies, they tend to think about entitlements, like, oh yes, women, they want welfare, women want free access to birth control. That's what progressives think women want. But when I think of a party that would be pro-woman and have pro-woman policies, I actually do think about policies that would empower women to be entrepreneurs and have economic freedom, the ability to sustain themselves without having to go on welfare. That to me is actual women's empowerment, and that's not what we see coming from the Democratic Party right now. Like you said, women are doing extremely well under Trump. You know, unemployment is down. There are many women in his cabinet that are performing well and doing great jobs in high-profile roles. And for progressives to look at that and say, nah, but you're welfare, you're a woman, how could you support this? It's kind of patronizing to me.
She also brought up a lot of the sexual misconduct among some political Republican politicians. Would you say that that's a Republican problem or a bipartisan problem?
You know, I actually laughed out loud when that came up in the video because, I mean, you know, we have Bill Clinton, one of the most famous politicians who's guilty of actual sexual misconduct and has admitted to it. And we also have Al Franken not that long ago. And look, I'm not going to defend GOP lawmakers who may or may not have done things. I don't know them personally, and a lot of the evidence is, I think, iffy at best. But the thing is, even if there are politicians in the Republican Party who are guilty of sexual harassment, abuse, or whatever it is, you change the politician. You don't change your political beliefs. Right? I would never point to Bill Clinton and look at progressives and say, see, I guess you guys support small government now, because it just doesn't work like that.
Well, that's the roaming millennial that we're hearing from right now, and I think a lot of conservative women are probably agreeing with you and shaking their head that they agree. So thanks for joining us this morning and giving us another point of view from what